2:04, and I call to order the Administration Committee meeting of Tuesday, April 25th. At this time, councilors, you have before you, and thank you for joining me, we have the minutes of the meeting from September 27th. Goodness. And I'd like to ask if you have had a time to read those minutes and approve of those minutes. And we actually have both sets, September 27th and January 24th.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of September 27th for 2023.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Start over.
Yeah. I'd like to the motion. Motion to approve the minutes of September 27th, 2022 and January 24th, 2023.
Second. All those in favor? Any questions?
Well, I had turned in
Yes, you did.
some changes, but I think they've already been made.
Yes, she did, and she sent that out to us in an email. It was some correction about the adjournment, how that was stated in one of the minutes, and she did.
Well,
Is
it's
it
just that
reflected?
There were three things below adjournment that didn't belong below adjournment.
Correct.
They belonged above adjournment.
And I believe she put those changes in there for us. Is it comfortable approving, or is it what you wanted?
Well, it's not reflected on here, but I'm assuming she printed this before
Yes,
I sent her the comment.
yes.
I'm just assuming.
That's- And Counselor just had the question about the changes you had made.
Yes, they should already on that last page. And first change.
And that there was something that followed it, but that, you put those back up in the body of the document. It was out of order.
September.
Yes.
It was not.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, please say aye. All right, thank you, councilors. Those minutes are approved. The first item of new business, we have a request regarding termination of deed restrictions, and this is made by the city of Birmingham, and we're going to have someone from the OCA's office to just walk us through what the exhibits and the termination of this deed restriction entails. Good afternoon, Attorney Sheffield.
Good afternoon.
Would you tell us what we have before us here?
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
And I apologize. Actually, Jim Stanley this is his agenda item, although he is out of the office attending a conference. So I'm trying to cover for him a little bit.
Okay.
My understanding is that this is simply a termination of some restrictive covenants that were in the deed that was when this property was originally conveyed from the city to Avondale Gardens LP. That property has since been conveyed to Alethea House, and Alethea House currently wants to develop the property, redevelopment of the property to be used as rental property at market rate. So in order for them to proceed with this development, the city would have to release these restrictive covenants that were on the original statutory warranty deed from 2002.
Councilor Clark? Yes.
So I was involved in this transaction in 2002, and the city had certain housing bond funds that we could use to induce development of affordable housing, and we did a land grant or a grant of funds for the land acquisition, to support the land acquisition for a project that really was an award-winning project. It was done with low-income housing tax credits. It also supported housing for people with disabilities. It was a partnership with workshops. And I see Chris Rattan there. If I get something wrong, you correct me. But I can remember after we did this, going up to Washington with Alethea House, and back then we had a group called Housing Enterprise of Central Alabama, and we were recognized for this award-winning project. But it was in several parcels. If you think of Avondale along 3rd Avenue, there's the big workshops thing, so it was the apartments around workshops. Plus on the 2nd Avenue South Side, it was Jeremy Erdrich designed these things that were like triplexes. And so they looked like big houses, but they were really 3 multifamily dwellings. But it looked like a house. And so the architecture was really unique, but these were affordable homes. And as often happens when the tax credits wear off, and then if you can think about Avondale in the time this was done, I mean, the market would only support affordable house because the downtown was vacant and run down. And so this was a great project for Avondale at that time. But now that the tax credit period has ended, the developer has an opportunity to sell the development. And I assume whoever they're selling it to does not want to be restricted to offer low rents in a market that can support higher rents. So I don't know, but I think they're disposing of it and not redeveloping it. And Chris, I could be wrong, but
100% right.
okay. Okay, and I'm sorry you got stuck trying to, fill in for Jim, because Jim was here when we did this, so he had a deeper knowledge of this transaction. But Chris can probably represent it better.
Well, the handouts don't show what's being changed, what we're taking out.
Yes, ma'am. If you
I mean,
look,
unless I'm missing a page or something. I see the termination of deed restrictions, but I don't see the original deed showing what we're,
it should have been attached as part of the committee submission. If you look, there's the original deed, statutory warranty deed, was executed on the 7th of June, 2002.
Yeah, we just
And it's-
have legal
it's a-
descriptions. Oh, is it this thing that?
It's
Yeah,
on-
we don't have a deed.
Page,
Can we see what you have, just to be sure we have everything?
it would be on page 1 of 5 of the statutory warranty deed.
Right here, page 1 of 5.
I don't have that.
And it's the
If you keep
conveyance.
going towards the end.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I do.
this is the one that says statutory warranty deed up at the top.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So the specific provision in which we're releasing is the very first paragraph at the bottom of page 1, where it is restricting, reading here, restricted to the development of single-family and multifamily residential units for lease to persons of low or moderate income.
So we're deleting item 1 of the subject to list and leaving 2, 3, and 4 in place?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
What seems to be missing is that reflected in the document?
Y-
I don't.
y- Yes, ma'am, and the proposed termination of deed restrictions you should have also received. That would have probably been the first attachment under the submission. And
Give us the page.
Okay, so we're terminating everything. There won't be any deed restrictions anymore.
that's correct.
actually, then, if we look at pages 1 through 5, 1 and 2, or of the original document that read statutory warranty deed, that has pages 1 through 5, then the comment had been that under subject, however, to the following, those items 1, 2, 3, and 4 have been removed. And that's what's reflective of the top document that we have.
It could have been clearer.
I know. We had to wade through this one. Yes.
But now it makes sense.
Do you agree with this, Attorney?
Yes,
I think
ma'am.
that's what we're saying.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, they don't really, I mean, it's too late for the as-is where it is to be a problem. Yeah, I'm okay.
Any other comments, Counselor? We're good? Thank you for walking us through this, Attorney Sheffield. You came in on the fly to assist Attorney Stanley. We'll tell him how you helped us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Counselors, if no further questions, then we have a motion and a second. Yes, go ahead, please.
So what happens to the people who live there when the property changes ownership? Do they get to serve out their current lease terms? Or does the new owner just say, hey, beat it, I can make more money?
No.
You know who you are, but just state it for the record so that we can get on the
Chris
recorder.
Rattan, Executive Director of Alethea House, and Carol did an excellent job of explaining what's going on here. We had an award-winning project. We invested $10 million in Avondale, and Avondale didn't look like Avondale. In fact, we tore down a gang house in order to do that. So we're proud that our investment in Avondale was part of the catalyst that allowed Avondale to be what it is today. But as Carol explained, now that the tax credits are gone, it's time for us to sell this to a local developer, the Dobbins Group, who are going to then renovate it and use it for market housing. And the answer to your question, any tenant who's there will be allowed to stay for 3 years, and their rent cannot be increased other than the cost of inflation. So we're not about getting people pushed out. But as units turn over, the new units will be able to be leased to people at the market rate. But anybody who's there gets to stay for 3 years, and the new folks can't jack up the rent.
Thanks for asking that question. Great question. Thank you. Any other questions, councilors? Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 1 passes, the termination of the deed restrictions. Thank you. Councilors, we do have old business, and I'll be sure that you get a copy. This is the Birmingham, the transparency form that we'd asked for some additional information and changes relative to this. And Deputy Administrator, who was going to give us the additional information about this item? Yes, sir.
Hey, Attorney Keith Sheffield.
Again? He knows. This is your thing. That's right. Come on, Attorney Sheffield. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So hopefully I'll be able to speak with a little more
Okay.
clarity
Thank
on
you,
this
sir.
agenda item. But as you recall, the administration committee had approached the OCA in terms of looking at the transparency in city government form. We reviewed the form and then I think sought some advice or
Give us that courtroom voice.
yes, ma'am.
Give
Okay.
us that courtroom voice.
We sought the committee and council's advice on any potential revisions that they would like to see in the form. OCA then did a review of what they were doing in other jurisdictions in an effort to try to make it consistent with what other jurisdictions are doing. And we took the original transparency form as a base, a starting point, and then heavily revised it to be more consistent with how the city functions now, as well as consistent with other jurisdictions. I would note that in most other jurisdictions, they don't have a transparency in city government form, except in the jurisdictions where it is required by statute. So I can address the form point by point, or I can entertain questions on the changes that we made in the rationale.
Became to be the rationale. It was wanting the form to be more in line with, there was some redundancy in the form, or there was some information I think that may have carried over from one year to the next, and the request, I may have just had this vendor several months ago, but now I have to go out and seek that information. So can you just walk us through what you changed relative to some of those items?
Yes, ma'am. So I will say the reason it looks a little weird too is that ultimately this is something that we're going to put online, right? And so it's in a format that's going to kind of be what it's going to look like online. But from an OCA standpoint, the transparency in city government form, although useful, can also be a choking point for the advancement of files for a whole host of different reasons. It puts a large burden on the OCA in order to police the receipt of this information, often delaying the advancement of files for weeks or months. So, and I feel that the original form also asked a lot of questions to receive the same information that that the proposed form achieves. So, the very first part of the form, there's always been quite some confusion around who this form applies to. It was for anything not subject to the Alabama competitive bid laws. Well, there's some different interpretations on that. Does that include, purchases or vendors that are either a GSA vendor or that come off of a national purchasing cooperative that's been approved by the state of Alabama? Or city boards and agencies, is that something that we need to have a transparency form from them? So there was a lot of questions on that. So we revised it to exclude those certain vendors because either we feel like those vendors have been vetted through a bidding process, or they are an associated entity to the city.
You have a question, Counselor? Go ahead.
I'm just saying, that raises an interesting situation because, someone could bypass the scrutiny by becoming a part of a group bidding organization or something, and because they're not subject, we wouldn't be able to identify conflicts in entities that are part of group purchasing organizations or state bid list or, so, I'm not trying to solve for that, but it just seems like it's a loophole.
Well, so I can understand the comment. The cooperatives that we are allowed to utilize as the city are vetted by the Alabama Department of the Examiners of Public Accounts, and they review their entire process as to how they bid things and respond and that sort of thing. So they're heavily scrutinized by the state.
So their terms and unit prices are set objectively. So when we buy at that price. We don't negotiate or anything. Okay.
That's correct, unless it's in that specific contract that was awarded.
Okay.
But by doing that, again, that streamlines the process a little bit in terms of review, which we felt was necessary. The second section, really, or third paragraph, just goes through the definitions of, these are statutory definitions that come straight from the Alabama Code relating to who is a public employee or a public official, as well as who is a family member of the same. So when we get into the more meat part of the transparency form on page 2, section 2, disclosures. Again, this is information that we basically gathered in the old form, but we just asking it a lot more straightforward. Again, and this is this is just identifying potential conflicts. And again, this information is also required by the Alabama Ethics Commission, and it's reported annually anyway.
questions about the disclosure section? Or any change? Yes. McDaniels?
Here, first, thank you to Attorney Sheffield. As it relates to this particular item, heard some of the keys context, but the council, along with other departments, expressed some frustration around effective vendors or attempting to do business with the city have complications with the clarity of the existing. I believe this has come up not only in several committee meetings, but it's actually been expressed here on the dais during council meetings. So they've been working with the understanding that they needed something that was a little bit more powerful, as Sheffield said, with other municipalities around the state, but basically extracting the same information in a more simplified form. With that, the council has acted upon a resolution that was adopted, I think, in 2009. The climate of the council and mayor relationship at that may have been behind that resolution being adopted by the council. But the Council Act has changed, so structurally, the 2009 resolution to some extent do not exist today for its effectiveness. So where this is a draft that's before the council, I think OCA was open to additional data from the council before it gets to a final document that the council will approve. Companion piece to that would be an ordinance, not a resolution.
All right, thank you. Any questions? You still have some other.
I have
Go
one
ahead.
question.
Ms. Abbott?
We ask a lot of questions on this form, but we don't use any question marks. Is there a reason for that? Is that a legal thing, that when you ask a question, you don't use a question mark?
That's probably a blind spot in the drafter of this
Yeah, because none of the questions have a question mark. It just seemed odd to me. But I think the form is much improved, and I actually read them and like them because, you want to know who you're doing business with, and if it's somebody you've never heard of before, it's kind of nice to be able to come in and read, get at least an idea of who's involved with them, especially if there's someone on the list of officers, directors, owners, members, partners, and executive management that for one reason or another, either by reputation or by the fact that you've had something to do with them. So I think it is improved. But I did want to ask, because one of the questions we used to be asked a lot was, I have to fill this thing out 3 or 4 times a year because I'm doing business with different organizations in the city. And so are we going to allow them to file one on file for the year, maybe, so every time they deal with us, they don't have to go online and refill out the form, or can they just copy it over and over?
Yeah, so at the very first portion of the form, right before the vendor name and contact information, it asks whether it's a new submission or an update to a previous submission. I think ultimately when this form moves online, it'll be something that you'll have to start with and just scroll through. If it's an update, you could just quickly go to any information that may have changed since your previous submission.
So they can fill it out online and they can go look at their form and they can say, oh, Bubba retired, so we'll take his name off and we'll put the new Bubba.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good, because that is a complaint. The same form over and over and over with the same information on it. But those are my only questions, just all those missing question marks.
Missing question marks. Yes, Attorney.
Yeah, I had one other comment, and it relates to the point that Mr. McDaniels was saying, that the companion piece will be an ordinance. because it's something, a matter of permanent operation, for one. And two, in order to make the certification portion of this agreement, where they're certifying that everything is true and correct, in order to give that statutory bite under 13A, it has to be by ordinance in order for us to enforce this. So, and that was something actually that was missing from the 2009 resolution.
Lots of things were missing in 2009. I was there, I witnessed it. Okay, well, I'm willing to make a motion that we forward this to the rest of the council with our recommendation if we correct all those missing question marks.
Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second. All right, thank you.
Second.
No further questions. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your work on this.
We appreciate the work. I know it's been a long time coming, and you've really listened to a lot of the counselors to reach this point, so thank you. And one question, Attorney Sheffield, as far as item number 1, the termination of the deed restrictions, do you know Attorney Stanley's plan? Was that going to have to be on the next council agenda, or how would that move?
I will check with Laura, his
Okay.
paralegal, and I will send that information to you.
Thank you. You'll let us know. Thank you very much. All right, councilors, the next regularly scheduled Administration Committee meeting will be held Tuesday, May 23rd at 2 p.m. in room D and E. And the agenda items must be submitted by 12 noon on Wednesday, May 17th. Do we have a call for adjournment?
That'll be a great birthday present for me. That's
Oh, we'll have to remember that.
I've always wanted to go to an administration committee meeting.
On your birthday. All right, thank you very much. At this time, do we have a motion for adjournment?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you, Counselor.